Hello, everyone. Welcome to our webinar. Today we are talking about building reactive web applications with pure Java. My name is Catherine Edelweiss. I am a developer advocate at Bellsoft, and our motto is providing the most complete Java experience, which is giving basically Java developers all the tools that they need to build and deploy Java applications. So in a way, the topic of this webinar is very special to me because we are going to build, well, not we, but my guest is going to build a full stack Java application in just Java. And it is possible with the help of the Vaadin framework. So today, I have a special guest. His name is Leif Astrand. He is a product architect and vice president of research at Vaadin, and he's going to show us exactly how to do that, right? How to use Java for everything in your application, however complex is that. Hello, Leif.
Hello.
Welcome. Before I hand over the stage to you, just a quick organizational moment. So please, if you have any questions, post them into the chat, and we will make our best to answer them, right? And whatever question that you have about Vaadin, about Java, right, just pop it up into the chat. All right, so I think we are ready to go. So here's to you, Leif.
Hello. So, do you get my slides visible there also? Oh yeah, there we
Yes.
go. Yes, thank you. So, hi, I'm Leif. Like already introduced, I kind of work at Vaadin, mostly nowadays trying to think about what are the kind of fundamental things. What does it mean to have a framework? What's important in a framework, and what are the problems we really want to solve? So a little bit of architecture, a little bit of kind of product management, a little bit of research, kind of looking ahead and so on. And you are here to learn about building reactive web apps and using only Java for that. So I guess you're Java developers. I guess that maybe you're also interested at least in front end. Maybe you even are front end developers. And kind of in this session, there will be some things for you who haven't heard about Vaadin before, or maybe just kind of heard about it but not really looked at it. So you will get a good introduction of what Vaadin really is. Then if you maybe looked at Vaadin at some point and tried out, and maybe it wasn't exactly what you needed then, now might be an excellent opportunity to have a second look, because what I will show you is some new features that we have built quite recently that in my mind they make Vaadin feel like a kind of different framework in some ways. So that might be quite interesting for you. And then finally, if you happen to already be a Vaadin user, Vaadin fan, then also just seeing these new features in live action might be interesting to you as well. So I think there's something for everyone here. If I actually get to move, yeah, there we have it. So kind of the whole point of Vaadin is that maybe people usually think that front-end development, it feels difficult, especially if you kind of come from a Java background and so on, because there's a whole bunch of things that you need to keep track of that is a little bit different from maybe regular Java development. And we are very much working on making that less difficult. So one of the reasons it's difficult is that you kind of typically end up building your own whole application stack. So you choose some kind of UI component library to use, some front-end framework like React or Angular or something like that. Then you got your communication layer there, like REST endpoints or GraphQL or something. And then you also pick your backend framework based on your preferences. And then you also end up maintaining this whole stack. So whenever anything there gets an update, it's up to you to keep track of keeping everything in sync, see that things still work out with each other and so on. And the alternative to that is to have a more kind of opinionated stack, which is what we at Vaadin prefer. So we take care of making sure that all the versions fit well together. Whenever anything is updated, we kind of manage all of that for you. So with that, you gain some productivity, but of course there's no silver bullet. So instead you give up some control instead. Another reason I think for why front end gets kind of difficult is that quite often front end development is a separate concern. It's that other team over there doing front end, and then you as Java developers, you build the back end. And that's usually not the most productive way of doing things. So mm, we have seen many times that when you got everything in one team, so a full stack team building both the UI and the kind of backend services, then you can build things more faster because there's less handovers, there's less waiting for others, and so on. And that's also something that we are really kind of proud of enabling for you to do. A while ago, we did a community survey, and out of the people using Vaadin, 98%, so basically everyone, said that they are more productive using Vaadin with a full stack approach than they were with whatever was their option before. And out of those, they also report that kind of on average compared to the previous approaches they used, they save like 45% time. Much of that thanks to kind of less handovers and so on. And since in software, money kind of development time is a quite big cost, so they also save a whole bunch of money there. Of course, this is self-reported by our kind of active community members, so maybe take it with a little bit of grain of salt, but it's still something that I think is quite good. So what we're gonna do, very soon we'll jump into just coding an application from scratch. But before that, let's take a quick look at some of the concepts so that you're not completely lost, even though I think Catherine actually also did a Vaadin introduction on this stream a while ago, but still just keeping you up to date. So in Vaadin, with the Java API, everything is a component. So if you want a button, you create a new instance of the button class. If you want a date picker, well, you create an instance of the date picker class. And if you want a grid of employees, then you create an instance of the grid class. So, I mean, very straightforward in one way. Now, the next thing is a grid doesn't make an application. You want something more also. You want to put things together into some bigger pieces. So for that, Vaadin also has different kinds of layouts. Maybe most basic one is the vertical layout. So kind of one button on top of each other in this case. There's also horizontal layout, so side by side instead, horizontally. And then since these layouts, they're also components, so you can put layouts inside layouts to build any kind of structure. There are also other kinds of layouts than these very basic horizontal and vertical ones, but just with these two, you can get almost anything done. And these are all kind of Java abstractions, so should be really familiar with any kind of Java experience. The next step to actually getting an application is to build your own component and use that as a view. So in this case, we got this hello world view, which extends the built-in vertical layout class. And in that, we just create a heading and that's the view. And then just an annotation on top of this class saying that this should be available on /hello. And then the framework takes care of all the plumbing for making that happen. Finally, you need to also have interactivity in your application. And this is the kind of new concept that we have been introducing that I talked about that makes it feel like a new framework in many ways. So the new way of doing interactivity in Vaadin is based on reactive state management using something we call signals. So in this example, we create a signal for containing a name value, a text field that we bind to the signal. So we say that it should read the value from the signal, and then whenever the value in the text field changes, it should set that value directly into the signal. And then based on that, we can, for instance, create a span that shows a string based on the value of that signal, but also some other things. And also, for instance, configure the span to be visible only if the name is not blank. in a kind of more graphical representation, this is how it works in the basic case. So when the user navigates to a view, Vaadin finds the right view, configures, basically runs constructor. In there, you do all the configuration kind of static values, you define the signals, set up all bindings for the signals, and then initialize the initial state. Those changes are applied, actually shown in the browser, and then the user can interact with that application. Whenever the user does something, there's an event that you can handle. In that, you update state, and again, signal bindings are updated based on that, and in that way, we get to that kind of interaction loop. Everything in the core of Vaadin is Apache 2 license, so it's open source, very business friendly. You can do whatever you want with it. There are also some additional commercial pieces like advanced charting library and so on. We sell support services, we sell consulting and so on. But everything I'm going to show you today, it's fully open source, and like 95% of all Vaadin users are happy with just the open source edition. So we got some new great powers. Let's put them to use. I'm going to build this kind of application. Well, okay, not this application, but you got the link there, so you can actually check this out also on your own. It's a basic Spring Boot application, so you can just clone that repository and do mvn Spring Boot run, and then it should run for you as well. So you can do that at your own time whenever you want. So let's get coding, because I mean, there's lots of advanced concepts here, but I think the best way and the easiest way, so that I don't get ahead of myself and so on, is that I actually code things, because that helps keep the pace to a manageable level also. So I'm going to start at Spring Initializer, where we can bootstrap any Spring application, including Spring applications using Vaadin. So I got Java selected here, I got Maven, I got the latest Spring Boot version, and all the default things. And then I'm going to add, no, that's not the button, that's the button. I'm going to add Vaadin dependency. I'm going to add JPA, because we're going to want to have a backend. And then also for this demo, just a simple H2 in-memory database.
I'm sorry, Lee. Is it important which Java version do we use here? So 21 or 25?
Vaadin, latest Vaadin version works great with anything newer than 21.
Okay.
I happened to have some problem with 25 a while ago, probably kind of related to my specific setup. So just to be on the safe side, I keep using Java 21, but we have tests showing that yes, Vaadin works with 25, with 26. We are also involved in the Open JDK early access program. So we are actually, every time there's a new Java 27 pre-release, we also run all our tests against it.
Cool.
Yep. So I downloaded the project. Let's unzip it. There we have it. And then I'm going to import it into my IDE. I'm using Eclipse. You can use whatever you want. So most people nowadays, of course, prefer IntelliJ. You can use VS Code. You can use Claude Code. You can use Notepad. You can really use anything. Because, I mean, like I keep emphasizing, it's just regular Java. So in this project, we got POM XML with some, nothing special really. We got the database JPA dependencies. We got an optional dependency for the Vaadin development server, and then also the regular Spring Boot starter. And then also here a simple Vaadin plugin that helps doing production builds and so on. Then we also got just a basic demo application. So this is just a Spring Boot application. To use Vaadin, we need to create a single view class. So let's create a main view class here. And here we're gonna extend the built-in vertical layout. We're gonna add a route annotation so that we can actually navigate to this. Here I'm using just the empty route, so it's kind of just at the root of the application. And there in this constructor, let's first just add a new H1 heading here, and let's put a text in it, just hello Vaadin, like so. And then I got a compiler, and maybe I'm just missing okay, I got an extra parenthesis there, but it's fine. So let's run this, and I'm running it in debug mode using hot swap agent. So this is a kind of a special or custom, a little bit patched JVM with an extra Java agent that lets me, in most cases, do lots of changes without having to actually restart the server, which is really convenient with when you develop with Vaadin. So here we got kind of very basic hello world. We also see here in the console, it warns us that I need to, well, not that I need to, but I don't have an app shell configurator, and that's something that will be useful later on. So I'll go ahead and create it right away. So we need to make this demo application also implements app shell configurator. And here I was just advertising hot swap agent, and this is one of the changes that aren't actually picked up. That's probably our problem, not hot swap agent, but it's such a rare thing that we haven't optimized it. So now restart to the server, and now the application looks different. Because now when we actually have defined this app shell configurator, which is where we kind of define all the global settings and so on, or some of them at least, it doesn't anymore select a theme by default or load the theme styles. So I need to import them, and now when I save, now it picks up those automatically, and now we've got a good kind of styling here again. So with that, let's actually start building a real application. So let's start by recreating the example I had on the slide with the text field and hello world and so on. So we're gonna create a text field. And in that, actually, let's say your name as the label, and the name of it is just name field. And then we're going to need a signal for storing the value. So a new value signal, and let's put an empty string there by default. And this is now the name signal, and let's turn that into an instance field instead. And then let's add the name field here and just save to see that we actually got that. Yep. So we're going to bind the field to the signal. So we bind the value, and we read from the name signal, and we write to name signal colon set. So that's just the basic method reference. And then finally we create the span. And in this case, we're gonna do a callback. And what we're gonna do is say hello, comma, and then read the value of the name signal in this way. And this is now the greeting, and let's add that to the view also, like so. Greeting. Yep. So now we should see the span there. Yeah, it's not perfect yet, but let's get there. So now I can type my name there, and then when I hit enter, it also updates the text there. Let's make it a little bit bigger for you. One thing that we can do now, which is kind of also one of the reasons I say this feels like a new framework now, is that hot swap is much nicer, because if I, for instance, also add an exclamation mark here at the end, then when I save this, Vaadin can now remember the value of this signal. So previously it would have forgotten that, and it would again be a blank value here. But now, thanks to these signals and reactive UI state management, it can preserve these kinds of values, and that makes it really, really smooth for development. Let's make those other two, or some other small tweaks here also. Let's make it so that immediately when I type something, it updates the span. Right now, it also only updates when I hit enter. So we're going to configure the name field to have a value change mode. That's going to be eager. And then also hide the label if there's no text in it. So bind visible to be a callback saying name signal get is blank, and actually the opposite. So it should be visible when the value in the signal is not blank. So with this now, every time I press a key or type anything, it updates, and then when I clear it out, the span is hidden. At this point, people usually wonder kind of what's this magic? How does this work? Kind of, this is just Java code, and does it compile it to JavaScript, or what goes on here? Because it's really interactive. And there's kind of, let's show that. I will actually do this in production mode uh, so that we avoid the kind of extra noise from development mode, because that's for those kind of live reloads and so on. There's some extra JavaScript that get in the way. So let's go there and do MVN. Actually, let's make this a little bit bigger also. MVN package. MVN package, I said. And package, I said. Like so. So then it very quickly now just creates a production bundle for this application. So this is Spring Boot application. So you can just do Java jar target / demo something something, and let that boot up real quick. There we are already. Great. So if you now look at this, the source HTML here, it's really simple. This doesn't contain the actual application. There's a little bit of kind of bootstrapping JavaScript here, some really basic styles. And then there's actually, this is the magic. This loads a kind of a rendering engine implemented by Vaadin that takes care of actually showing everything. So if you look at the requests, we see, actually, let's reload the page. Oops. And zoom in a little bit here also. So we see that kind of, actually, let's do it again. We say here that it's kind of, well, it loads the index HTML, the JavaScript, some CSS, some fonts, so a little bit of helper JavaScript, and then it sends this post request to actually get rendering instructions from the browser, from the server. And if I type something, let's clear this. And if I type anything into the field, we see that it sends quite small request here. If you actually look at the request, it basically says that now the value in this field is this string. And then if you look at the response, it basically says that now we should render a span containing this text and make it visible and so on. And in this way, it kind of works. So if you look at this again in the kind of state representation here, we see that for navigation, it's just as any single page application. It's just getting the root page there. And then for this user interaction, every time the user does something, that goes as an HTTP request to the server. And then we run the appropriate handler or whatever. And then the result of updating that state to actually apply those bindings in the browser, that goes back to the browser in the same response for the request that sent the event to the server. So that's basically how it works.
We have
a question, I see.
Yeah. Sorry, Leif, to interrupt you. We have a question. So does Vaadin use JavaScript to a big extent?
Yep. There's a quite big extent. So, I mean, we got, I think, like 50,000 lines of JavaScript for just the rendering engine. And then all of these components, like, for instance, this text field here, it's actually a Vaadin text field, kind of registered as a custom HTML element in the browser, and the JavaScript for that is also quite much. So yeah, it's a very JavaScript heavy framework behind the scenes, but the whole point is that you, as a application developer, you are kind of isolated from that. You don't have to see all of that JavaScript, but you can instead do things in Java, as I'm showing here, like right now also.
So do I understand correctly that Vaadin takes your Java code and translates it into JavaScript?
That's not exactly the case. So actually, it's more like Vaadin is using the web browser as a thin client. We are sending rendering instructions to the browser, kind of create this DOM element, add it to this parent, add this listener to it, send a request to the server when that event is fired, and then that is kind of routed to the right place in the server, like, for instance, this name signal : set callback that updates the state. And in that way, it's actually running all your JavaScript, Java code as such on the server, rather than kind of translating it to JavaScript or anything like that.
Okay, thank you.
Yep, and we're actually very soon going to see an example of that also. So let's continue building the application. I want to create a to-do list application here, and for that we first need a database. So let's create an entity. That's a to-do entity. So for that, we need to have an entity annotation. We need to have a private int ID, and that's an ID, and it's a generated value. Gonna have a string for the name of the task, and we're gonna have a boolean for whether the to-do is done or not. Let's create order requires setters and getters, and then we're done with that. Then let's also create a repository, so to-do repo, and that's an interface, yes. And here we just extend JPA repository for to-do and with integer keys like this. And that's all the backend stuff we're gonna do. I'm gonna clean this just to be sure, because every now and then when I run things also from Maven through the command line, things get messed up. So let's turn this into, let's actually start the server now also again. So let's turn this into an actual Java kind of to-do application. We can actually, did it start now? It's still starting. Now it's up and running, great. So let's actually start turning this into a to-do application. So this is kind of now a text field for actually providing a new task. So this is a create task field. And then the name of the signal is no longer name signal. So let's change that to create task signal. And then we're gonna need a button also. So for creating the task, so a new button, and that's gonna say like create task, create, and this is then a create task button. And let's add that to the view instead of the greeting. And let's also reuse this binding, but instead of binding the visibility, let's bind the enabled state. So now we should have text field for entering a task, and then whenever we have any value in that, the button gets enabled. Next, let's make the button actually do something. So we're gonna add, first actually let's add a click shortcut. So this is so that I can also hit enter and also kind of do the same as clicking the button. So this is gonna be key dot enter here, and we don't need any modifier. And then we say listen on the create task. Oh, I got a typo there. That's why it doesn't autocomplete. And let's actually rename it also create task field. And then we also gonna add the actual click listener here. So add a click listener. We get a click event there, and what we're gonna do is that we create a new to-do. That's to-do, and then we set the task of that to-do. We read that from the, oh, I got the same typo there also. How annoying. No, not there but from the signal. Let's rename that, because otherwise I will be nuts. Create. Yeah. Now we got, no, still not. Well, let's do it like this. And here now, in this case, in the binding, I'm doing get on the signal to read the value in a reactive way. So basically, based on this, the framework detects that whenever the value of the signal changes, it should run this callback again to generate a new value to, in this case, configure whether it's enabled or not. But in this case, we don't want to do that. We want this to run just once. So that's why I'm using peak instead. So here we have created the to-do. We have configured it. We need to inject into the view the to-do repo. So we integrate here with Spring. We integrate with CDE for Jakarta EE also, and Quarkus. So you can just have your beans and inject them into your view logic. In most cases, you might probably want to have services in between to kind of have the proper isolation and so on. In this case, I'm doing things simplest possible way. We're gonna say repo.save for the entity, and then finally also take that wrongly named signal and say set the value to blank again, so that we can type in a new to-do. So with this implemented, I'm gonna put a breakpoint here in the beginning of the click listener, and then I'm going to create a task. So for instance, we want to show a summary also in this application. When I hit enter, we actually go to server-side UI logic. So I mean, here it just stopped on the breakpoint, just as you would expect in a Java application. I can step through this. I can see that at this point we got a to-do instance with these values and so on. So it's kind of exactly the same debugging experience that you would expect from any Java application. Let's let that continue. And yeah, we also click the button, so it actually saved this item in the database. But we can't see that yet, so we need to also bind the children. What does that mean? It means we need to have some view state to contain the list of to-dos that we want to show, and then we need to configure something to have kind of child components based on those components, based on those items, I mean. So for that, we need a new signal instance. In this case, it's going to be a list signal. So that's just a signal. There's a list of items. And this is, well, let's name it to-dos, for instance. And this is now a list of to-do entities. And here now, when we run the constructor, we can load all the items we have in the database and populate the view state used that based on that. So for each, we're going to do to-dos colon insert last to-dos insert last. Yep. And then we do the same also when we have saved. So here we actually also get an updated to-do with ID populate and so on. So let's insert that also to the view state. And then finally, let's create a layout for actually showing these to-dos. So new vertical layout. And this is now the to-dos layout. And then let's remember to add it to the view, to-dos layout there. And then finally, bind the children for that. So we're going to bind to the to-do signal. And now we also need to provide a callback for creating one component for each child item. So this callback, it receives a to-do signal, and then it should return a component. So first, let's just return a span, new span, I mean, and we're going to do to-do signal dot map to pull out a specific value. So in this case, the task. So now when I save, we should see the value from the database, and kind of if I reload, we still see it because it's actually loaded there from the database. If I add something new, like for instance, mark as done, then immediately when I do that, the view state is populated from this line. And also when I refresh, I see that it's also actually stored in the database. So let's then actually implement the summary here. So for that, I'm gonna create a new span. I'm just new span. And what I'm going to do here, this is the summary. Let's add it to the view like always. So here I would just want to show kind of count how many items you still have remaining. So kind of remaining tasks, colon, tasks. Yep. And then here we're going to read the to-dos signal value, get all the values inside it. We get this as a stream. And then I'm going to filter over the stream. We get a to-do instance here, and I'm going to choose only those that are not done yet. And then I'm going to count all of these. So in this way, we now get that now we have 2 remaining tasks. Let's add yet another one like collaboration, for instance. And then it also updates the count to be 3. So that's that. Then let's proceed. Luckily, we have a to-do list here. So let's proceed with marking to-dos as done. So for that, we're going to expand what we have for each of these rows. So we're going to add a checkbox also before the text of the task. So we're going to actually expand this, not just return a single span. This is a task span, but instead we're going to return a horizontal layout. So we've got one line for each item. So a horizontal layout with the span there first, and then we're also gonna create a checkbox. So that's the done box. Let's first just add it to the layout, save and see what we got. Yeah, there we got the checkbox. It doesn't do anything yet because we haven't hooked it up. So let's do that next. We take the done box and bind the value. And here we're gonna first kind of get the check status from the to-do. So that's to-do signal map to-do : is done. And then the write callback, in this case, we receive a new Boolean, done, true or false. And then with that, we need to do two things. We need to update the database, and we need to update the view state so that we immediately see what's going on. And for doing this, we can actually do all of that through the signal. So we run the update method here. We receive a to-do instance, so that's the actual value of the signal. That's the entity. So we can do to-do.set done, and we have done there in the closure. And then we return repo.save to-do, because this update callback always needs to return the latest value to use. So with these changes, we have now hooked up the checkbox. So now when I check this, we see that it updated the count immediately. If I reload the page, we see that it also gets it from the database. Before I mark this one as done, I'm going to add one more feature. So I'm also going to actually visually strike through the items that are done so that we better see that they're actually done. And here I'm going to cheat a little bit. So I promised you 100% Java, but here I will actually do a little bit of inline CSS, so inline styling basically.
No.
If you're afraid of that, then just close your eyes for a minute and then you can continue again, but it's not that dangerous. So I'm getting the style, server-side style representation, and here I can bind something to a signal again. So what I want to bind here is a CSS style named text decoration, and no typos there. And then we're going to do a signal callback again to choose a value for the text decoration style. So actually let's extract this done thing, because we're going to reuse that. So this is now the done signal, because we want to use exactly the same state here also. So we're going to read the done, not done box, done signal, get the value. And then if it's true, then we're going to say that the text decoration should be line true. And if it's false, we say null, basically saying that we don't have any text decoration style. And with this small addition, now you can open your eyes again if you're afraid of CSS. Now we see that now the line is actually have the strike through. And then now we can also mark this one as done. And whenever we do that, it updates the count and it updates also the style there. Next, let's do collaboration. So what do I mean by that? I mean, we might want to have many users working on these to-dos together. So let's open another user's view here. And what we notice here now is that, link zoom out a little bit like this. Actually, let's make this smaller and this bigger. What we notice now is that kind of if I change the state, for instance, on this one, the other one doesn't get any update. If I reload, then it gets the update because then it read it from the database. But it kind of, you need to actually, in this case, reload. And the reason for that is, of course, that now all the sharing happens through the database. It's basically through this repo. But we can do better than that. Because
Friends,
what we can do...
yeah,
Yep.
sorry. Friends, for those who have joined us a little bit later, if you have any questions, feel free to post them in the chat and we will answer them to the best of our knowledge. Yeah.
No, we will give the right answer.
I'm zipping it, okay.
Yeah. So yeah, I was saying that we got this list signal. We got this state, and this is the state we want to share between all the users looking at this. And before I forget it, we need to also here now in the app shell configurator, we need to add one annotation at push, telling Vaadin that it should also keep a WebSocket open to be able to push out changes at any time. And then I need to reload both these because that isn't picked up fully automatically. So what we're going to do is that we're going to take this list signal and share it between users. The first step here is to change the type to a shared list signal instead. So this is quite similar to the regular list signal, but it's actually optimized for sharing things live. So it deals with kind of concurrent updates and so on. One of the compromises it does to do that is that it does defensive copying of everything. So you got kind of immutable ish values. And for that, we need to give it a class literal also. And to actually make this shared, I'm going to do a really nasty trick. I'm just going to make it a static field. In a real application, you should definitely have a service bean that is a singleton, and in that have this list as kind of an instance field in that instead. But in this simple demo, I'm just making it a static variable. Finally, we also need to now change this initialization logic so that we're not inserting yet another copy of each to do every time the constructors run. So let's do no if to do's peak is empty, then and only then we do the initialization. So with just this relatively simple change, now the list of to-dos is shared between these two users. So if I now check the box for one user, we see that it also immediately updates everything for the other user, which is exactly what we wanted in this case. So if we look at this again through this kind of graphical representation, we see that there's actually kind of two different paths through the update cycle. We already looked at the kind of HTTP request and response thing that happens when the user updates something for themselves. But then if there's any external change, this can be anything. It can be some other user doing something. It can be that you get an event on some Kafka thread or Kafka topic or something. It can be you started an asynchronous job and now it's completed. It can be something that you get kind of in an LLM AI chat, kind of getting one token at a time from the LLM streaming out responses. It can be really anything because you just have a regular Java method call. Whenever it updates any state, the framework automatically detects that now we don't have an HTTP response to send this update for applying these bindings to the browser, and then it automatically sends that back over the WebSocket instead if there's a WebSocket there. So in that way, things are kind of automatically, you don't have to care about if it's a background update or not. You just update the state, which is kind of what we indirectly do here also. So next feature, let's actually add that to the to-do also. So we want to have remove tasks and also make it pretty, of course. So there we got some more things to work on here. So let's do the removal. So what I want to do, I want to add a button here at the end of each item. And then when we click the button, then it should obviously remove that line. So a new button. And in this case, that's the remove button. And here I'm going to do a Vaadin icon dot trash. And then let's add that to the end of the horizontal layout. And now we see kind of what we wanted, but not really. The alignment is a little bit off, and maybe the button is a little bit kind of taking too much attention here. So let's fix those two issues. Let's first extract this layout instance so we can actually configure it. I want to do set align items, and I want to set baseline alignment. So let's just save this and see. Yeah, now the text jumped so that it's kind of, well, baseline aligned, like they say in kind of graphical design. And then also let's make the button a little bit kind of not so in your face. So remove button, and here we're gonna apply one of the built-in style variants. So add theme variant. So here we got a whole bunch of different things we can do, and in this case I want to have small and button variant dot tertiary, so kind of not primary, not secondary, but even less important than that. And with those small changes, we now have kind of this nice button that we can click to remove things. except of course we haven't made it actually do anything yet. So let's do also a click listener there with a click event. And what I'm going to do there is kind of, well, kind of the same thing that we did for the checkbox. So we're going to update the UI state and update the database. So let's start with the repo, and there we're going to do a delete. We need an entity instance, and we get the latest version from the to-do signal peaking there again, because we don't want to rerun this. And then we say to-dos remove, and that's based on the signal instance. So like this. So now we're gonna, how can we test this? Well, of course, I mean, we're Java developers. This is pretty enough. So let's not even make it pretty. And now we also see that the removal actually removed. Let's also reload the page to actually see that yes, it's there. So we can also mark this one as done. And that's basically the basic demo that I wanted to show you. I got one more thing here if we have time, but let's also see if we have any more questions or any other topics to discuss here.
Yeah, a couple of questions. So the first one is, how steep is the learning curve for Vaadin? So for example, you come with zero knowledge into Vaadin, brave new world. How fast can you actually learn what it can do for you?
I mean, you shouldn't ask me. I've been using Vaadin for 20 years now, so everything is
Oh,
obvious for me, obviously.
yeah.
But um, maybe a little bit more seriously, some of our customers, they say that in their experience, kind of someone who already knows Java, they are getting up to speed in less than a week. So that's quite nice. I think it's actually one of the things, because some people say that they're afraid of using Vaadin because it's not the biggest framework in the world. It's not maybe so easy to recruit developers who already know Vaadin. But at the same time, thanks to everything being very just straightforward Java, you use the same kind of IDE, you use the same refactoring tools, you use the same debugger, you use the same everything that you're already familiar with. So that means that it's actually very quick to get started also.
Mm-hmm. Cool, thank you. Does Vaadin have any limits? So can you actually hit the limit with the Vaadin and say, okay, I really need a different framework for my UI?
Of course, I mean there's no silver bullet. So one limit is definitely uh, about server side resources, because the way things work here is that now we have actually we have in this case we have two browsers with this view open, which means that we actually have two instances of main view open, and main view has kind of all of these four component instances in memory and so on, which in practice means that you got for each active user, typically, I mean this is a very simple application, but typically you got between 100 kilobytes and 1 megabyte of Java heap used for each active user. So if you
Mhm.
do the math, 1 gigabyte of memory can support around 1000 users. You can get a server with kind of 10 or 100 gigs of memory without completely blowing the bank. But if you are dealing with kind of millions of concurrent users, then Vaadin is maybe not the best solution for you.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I see. Well, there's another question. How rich is the Vaadin component library? I mean, the level of flexibility it provides, or CSS comes in handy?
Yeah, so we can actually go to the Vaadin uh, documentation, and here we see a quite long list of components that are kind of built-in part of the framework. Some of these have a dollar sign, meaning that it's one of those commercial ones, but most of them are definitely available for free. So I mean, for instance, I think the date picker, it's one of our coolest components. You can kind of smoothly scroll through it, and it's a really nice one. And for all of these components, we also document how you can customize the styling. Some of that styling is through those theme variants that I showed you already with the button. So there's kind of align left, align end, small, and so on from for this date picker. And those you can apply directly with Java enums. Then there's also a whole bunch of additional things that you can customize through CSS. So you can do a whole bunch of different things. For instance, kind of background colors and heights and paddings and kind of rounding radius. And there's really lots and lots of things that you can customize with CSS. So we actually even have two built-in themes that you can use as starting points. So there's Luma that looks like this, and then there's Aura that looks a little bit different, and both of these are also very very flexible, very customizable. So if you're happy with the default looks, then you can get by without any CSS. But most users, or well, not most maybe, but many users eventually also do see some CSS to customize the overall styling of the application.
Yeah, when I started with Vaadin, I at first thought, okay, great, they have the built-in styles. I don't need to deal with CSS. I don't need anything. And then I spent like several hours customizing my button colors and stuff like that. And I think that's a steep road.
Yeah, I mean, we also have in the kind of developer tools, there's this quite fun. Let's actually select, for instance, select the button. There's this quite fine theme editor. Well, let's do that. It said I need to restart my server, but I don't think I need to do that. So yeah, we got this kind of inline developer editing thing where you can, for instance, kind of change the color of this specific button to be something else. And okay, it's not super visible now when it's also disabled. So let's actually type something there. Now you see it's that red color you selected, and actually in the application we see that there's it created somewhere deep in here. It created, no, actually that's not where it created. It created this theme editor CSS, which has now CSS to set the color of the label of this button, and it even also edited the Java code to actually add a class name so that it can be targeted from CSS.
Okay, this one is actually super cool because it means that up to some point you don't even need to know CSS, right? Because you can do that with
I mean,
up to some point.
Up to some point, yes. Because I mean, just with kind of regular code, also with CSS, you want to reuse different things, apply the same styles for different kinds of components and so on. So typically, you want to actually use the structure that the CSS language provides for you. But up to a certain point, you can definitely kind of do all of that styling also just through this editor.
Cool. Thank you. Well, I think we can move forward.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, I do have kind of one more thing here, which is I think a quite cool feature also. Let's make this smaller again. So I also want to implement editing. So I can just double click on one of these items, and then this text changes into a text field instead, so that I can actually type in a new value and kind of do inline editing in that way. So let's also implement that. It's kind of the same concepts that we already saw, but let's still do it because I think it also shows how flexible it is with these kind of binding values through signals and so on, which is really the new and exciting feature we have. So for doing that, I need to have for each line, I need to have a little bit of state saying that are we now in editing mode or not. So let's create a Boolean signal for that. It's false by default, and it's just editing, for instance, the name of that. And then I want to say that this task span, let's add a double click listener to that. We get a click event here. And what we want to do here is that we say editing set true. And then before we test it, let's say that the task span is visible only signal.not, only when we're not editing should the task span be visible. So let's try out just this small part first. So now when I double click, it disappears. We also need to add a text field that should be shown instead. So a new text field, and that's the task field. And let's remember to always add it to the view first. It's so common to forget that, and then you wonder why doesn't anything work. And then the task field bind visible, and it should be visible when editing. So let's try that step also. Now when I double click, we get a text field here instead. Great. Let's also focus it by default and make it so that if I hit ESC on the keyboard, then it closes without saving anything. So this actually, let's do the focusing first. So when we double click and change the state, we also should do task field focus. And then here we're going to say task field add key down listener. No, actually, let's take the other overload. This one, key dot enter. No, escape is the one I want to listen to. The listener, well, we get some kind of event. And what we're going to do here is just to say editing set false. And then we don't need to define any modifier. And there I have a typo, escape. Yeah. So let's try these small changes. Now when I double click, it focuses, and when I click ESC, it stops editing. So then finally, also let's add the value binding here. So let's bind the value. Actually, let's first extract this signal also. So this is the task signal. And let's put it there next to the other one. So what we're going to do is bind the value, read from the task signal. Let's deal with writing later. Let's just check that now when I double click, it actually has populated the value. And then finally here we receive a new task value. So that's a string. And here we're going to do basically exactly the same that we did for the checkbox. But instead of doing set done, we're going to do set task and get the task value there. So with these small changes, we should now also have editing here. So I can double click this one, say show summary status or whatever status. And then when I click enter, we get a bug. Interesting. This used to work. One thing we should do though, I don't know if that actually causes the bug here, but let's do it anyway, because I forgot we should also here say that when we save something, we should do close the editing also. That might actually cause the issue indirectly here. So let's try again. Actually, it did save, so that's a positive thing. Show summary. Yeah, now it doesn't break because there was some kind of infinite loop there. So that's something we avoid by also closing the editor. So now we have built, I mean, this is almost exactly 100 lines of code, a fully functional to-do list application. It has collaborative kind of sharing of the to-do list with users. You can add new tasks, you can mark them as done, you can delete them, you can edit them, and it took us like 30-40 minutes, something like that. I don't know exactly because we had some questions in between there also. So that's really the power of Vaadin. One more thing I could show you before I forget, because I mean I've been now coding everything by hand here just to kind of prove the point that it's possible. But if you actually do like most people do nowadays, use some kind of coding agent, then we have this MCP server that you can hook up with, for instance, Claude Code with just this one-liner command. And we also have instructions for all the other kind of coding agents. And with that, it's much better at finding the latest Vaadin version documentation and some other kind of tips and tricks that we teach the agent through this MCP server. Now I think I'm done.
Wow, that was Very fast, like Josh Long. He's also a fast coder.
Well, I need to practice a little bit still, but he's definitely an inspiration.
Oh, yes. So we have some comments and some questions. So the first comment is, thank you very much for your presentation. You inspired me to use more Vaadin in my projects, which is a great comment, right? I think that's the goal of us doing webinars, streams, writing articles, right? So to get more people interested in the tech that we do. Right. Can I get the sources of your demo project? I have posted the link to the
Yep,
demo that Elif was using into the chat, and I will update the description of this. Yeah, so you can scan the QR code as well here, and I will post the link into the description of the stream when it's going to be ready and published on YouTube.
yep.
Another question. Oh, by the way, I actually had similar in my mind. So took a glimpse at Swing once, and just to avoid deferring this question, what Swing has in common with Vaadin?
Mm, I would say quite much in one way, because it's quite the same programming model. You create instances of components. There are Java objects. You put those into kind of a tree of components with layouts and then buttons and whatnot as the leaf nodes. You get events from those components. They are run in the same way. Uh, Specific to Swing, one difference is exactly what I was emphasizing today, this reactive UI state management. So with Swing, you update components directly in those event listeners, like setting the text of a label or something like that. You can also do that with Vaadin, but now with this reactive UI state management, we think there's an even better way. If you're using instead JavaFX, which is the following version of Swing in one way, then they also have exactly the same kind of approach with reactive bindings. But there's also, of course, the very big difference. Swing runs as a desktop application. Uh, Back in the days, you could run it on the web as an applet, but that's no longer an option for lots of reasons. Vaadin, on the other hand, runs only as a web application. Nowadays, you can take your web application and install it to your kind of home screen on a mobile device, or also kind of as a native-ish application on desktop OSs. So you can do kind of similar thing, but at the center of it, it's still a web application.
Oh, I have the outflowing question out of that. So can Vaadin be used as a front-end framework for mobile development?
Yep.
Because why not? Right?
Yep. And also, I mean, I didn't actually show it, but let's show it now. All the built-in UI components, they are also quite mobile optimized. So for instance, this date picker, if I open this, come on, if I open the date picker on a mobile view, okay, this is still not a mobile viewport. This is a mobile viewport. So in this case, it becomes a kind of full screen pop-up instead of just kind of a smaller one. And we got similar things in most of the built-in components. So they are actually responsive and behave in a mobile optimized way when that's appropriate.
Okay, cool. Thank you. I know that there were two parts of Vaadin, like a Vaadin Flow and Vaadin Hilla, right?
Yep.
And Vaadin Hilla was more about TypeScript, was more about, well, not about Java in a way, right?
It was both. So it was TypeScript front end, very, very kind of tightly coupled to a Java backend. So whenever you made any changes in the backend types you used for communication with the client, for instance, like changing the name in a DTO or something, then Vaadin would also automatically generate corresponding TypeScript for actually calling that and having the same fields in the DTOs and so on.
Mm-hmm.
We started building this a couple of years ago, and uh, at some point we realized that yeah, it kind of works, but it's not impactful enough for us to keep investing in it. So it's still supported, you can use it, but we are no longer promoting it as a standalone solution. But if you, for instance, have a Vaadin application where you need to build a couple of views that also work offline without kind of sending a request to the server and running those click listeners or whatnot for each interaction. But you want to have it so that the application can kind of work independently for a while you're offline. But the rest of the application is then kind of a fully server-side Java thing. Then definitely you should still use the Hilla functionality for building that part of the application.
Okay, I see. I see. Well, and the last question that I have from myself is what is the oldest Java version that Vaadin supports?
So the latest Vaadin version is Java 21 or newer,
That's the
but
baseline, right? 21.
yes,
Mm-hmm.
21 is the baseline and 25 works really nicely also. But also there are older Vaadin versions that are still maintained for paying customers, and they go as far back as Java 8.
Wow, that's that's huge.
Yep.
Right. Well, yeah, you can let go of applets and use Vaadin then in this case. Although I'm not sure that anybody uses applets with with Java 8.
Mm,
Right.
yep.
Okay. Well, friends, if you don't have any other questions, Leif, thank you so much for this webinar. I personally learned a lot for myself because back in the days when there were no signals, I was building the reactive application with Vaadin, and I remember I twisted the configs, and that was not as smooth as right now. So signals is a very very cool feature. Thank you for that. Where can we find you? Where can our audience find you if they have any questions afterwards?
Well, they can find me on vaadin.com, I guess. I am on. I mean, I'm not a developer advocate. I'm actually kind of more inside the company building things, so I'm not super active on any social media and so on. I do have a Twitter account, so I guess you can find me there. Maybe you will post the link
Sure,
afterwards.
of
I guess it's
course.
not even called Twitter anymore, but you know.
I still call it Twitter forever.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. All right. Okay, I see. Well, thank you again so much. And thank you everybody who came to our webinar. The link will be available to the webinar itself, so you can rewatch it later or watch it the whole if you came a little bit later. And well, I guess that's it. We can call it a day. Thank you so much, Leif. Thank you, friends. And have a good evening. Goodbye.
Thank you.